Hi, it's Manong George, and here are my top tips for passing the IELTS. Just a little disclaimer, I do not claim that I am a professional English tutor, but I have to say, I've taken the IELTS twice, and I've passed them quite well. Alright, so these are my own personal tips of helping you pass your IELTS test. So for the first part, we'll go on to reading. Read something in English. That's the easiest way. So back then, when I first took the IELTS, the advice was to read English newspapers. Obviously, there's not a lot of newspapers now, so go on to English websites. Read the BBC, right? Also, when on the test exam itself, don't read slow. Practice to read fast. You need to be reading every day for you to kind of get how to read and skim well. Do not take too long in answering a particular item. Remember, there are sets there and things can move quite quickly if you just focus on one. Then there might be a problem, right? So you need to make sure you're reading fast, trying to answer fast. If you don't know that answer, skip. This would allow you to come back to that answer and hopefully get it right. And most importantly, look at the grammar. Look at the singular and the plural form of words. A little S in the end might make the difference between having a correct or wrong answer. Listening. What do you need to do? Watch English shows. A good thing to watch is the BBC. Doesn't matter if it's just the news or let's say you follow other documentaries. You know, what you need to do is to make sure that you get used to listening, grabbing the intonations, understanding how things are said, the syntax, how words are used. The more you hear it, the more you understand, the easier this part of IELTS would be for you. A good practice might be to write it. All right? Some people say you get to understand more when you start writing things. So take your time. Don't worry. This is your own practice. Listen to those English shows. You don't get a word, write it down. Say it out loud. So you might say, why do I have to write while trying to listen? Why do I have to practice this? Well, during your IELTS test, sometimes you don't really have that time, you know? The tape, when it plays, there's no such thing as, can you play that back and rewind? Actually, sometimes they change it up. So it might be worth noting things down. What do I mean by they changing things up? Hi, good morning. Do you know 123 High Street? Oh, actually, I'm looking for 124 High Street. Can you tell me where is that address? That's his little scenario there. That little scenario sometimes pop up on IELTS tests. They actually lead you one way and then sometimes, they play something else. They ask for something else. So be wary of that. Now for the writing session. Right. Again, I can't stress it enough. You need to practice, right? But with writing, the only way you can actually check if you're doing well is not you checking your own work. You need to find somebody who can check your writing. Because otherwise, I'd say if I'd write my own, I might get all correct, right? So you have to get somebody who's credible and who's actually valid to check your writing schemes. Also, remember to concentrate on your creative writing bit, okay? Because technically, to be honest, the first part, well, this is in my humble opinion, I'm so sorry. The first part of the technical writing is easier because you can be actually very objective about it. So the creative writing allows you to be subjective, but as well, you have to be worried of time. Okay? So you have to make sure that you put your best input into that creative writing bit. A bit more tips for writing. More tips on writing is don't use contractions. What do I mean by contractions? When you write do not, you don't say don't. All right, you get me? And don't use that. You get me? You feel me? Be professional in what you have to write. Avoid things that just add to the paragraph. I think, I know for a fact. Well, you don't have to say that because you already are writing that. So it doesn't give you a bit more of sentence. You're probably banking on the word count rather than the essence of what you're writing itself. And now for the speaking part. You don't need an accent. If you speak in a certain way and that's English for you, then that's your own accent. It's better to speak when you actually know what you're trying to talk about, so you don't have to worry about how you sound. Because how you sound is actually basically subjective, you know? I don't sound like anybody, I suppose. And don't expect that I will sound like you, or you yourself would expect that I would sound, you would sound like me. All right, so drop the accent. That's the first thing. So normally, the first thing that they would ask during the speaking session is something about yourself. Hi, my name is George, and I've been a nurse for over 15 years. I've been practicing nursing here in the UK for over 10 years, but I work now with insurance. This might be telling about what you do, how long have you been doing it, any hobbies and interests, or even telling them about your hometown, your family. These are nice things to tell the speaker during your introductions. Plus, it can help you gain confidence because, the speaker doesn't know that, right? So you know more than the speaker. So it's your time to make sure that, you get that out there and you introduce yourself in a very conversational manner. The important bit in the speaking test is the substance of what you say. Is it congruent to what your subject is actually? During the speaking test, you will be marked on 4 items. First is fluency. Fluency is basically, are you speaking clearly? Things like, I'm not so sure. When you try to elongate words or you say that doesn't add to your fluency. So these are things you could actually try to take off, and rather you could just simply pause. But don't pause for a minute, okay? Pause for like a few seconds just to give you time to recollect and say what you have to say. The second thing is pronunciation. So pronunciation is how well do you speak the language? How well do you enunciate the words? One perfect example, and this I grew up with, is what I tend to call the PF complex. What's that? Do I say it's a pan that you use for cooking, or do you use the electric pan when you're hot? You see what I mean? So vocabulary. What is your mastery of the English language, and what words do you actually use? Of simple and complex words. Complex words can give you a good score, I suppose, because obviously that shows you know a lot more. However, the downside there is that if you don't actually really understand a complex word, don't use it. You might fall into the trap of using a word that you don't actually understand. It's not right for the context of the word or the sentence, is what I mean. So for the grammar, you have to always look into the tense that you're actually using during that conversation or during the time that you're given the chance to speak. The examiner looks at whether you're using the correct tense, whether it's the past, present, or future tenses that you're looking, and is it actually applicable to your sentences. These are the things that they look into your grammar to make sure that you have that mastery of the English language. Other very important tips are 1. Eye contact. Yes, you need to establish eye contact. I know sometimes people can be uncomfortable in establishing the eye contact, but what you can always do is you don't really have to look in people's eyes. All right. My examiner, my personal experience, my examiner back then, 10 years ago, the first time taking the IELTS, was always moving her eyebrows. And initially, I found that very distracting. I was, really fighting that urge to tell her off, actually. But what I did was, I focused in between her forehead. And that got me through. But I can't believe that this lady was doing this all the time. I don't know, it might be just a trick off her sleeve, or maybe it's just something that she does. Who knows? All right, but that's my personal experience. The other thing that you should look into as well is to take your time. Don't be too slow, but then again, don't be too fast. You're not trying to do or win a rap game. You have to speak correctly and comfortably so that your examiner could also hear and understand the words you say. So the other thing that you should also do, remember, you're given a minute to write down on your piece of paper. Personally, what I did was that I do a little algorithm so that I have things to follow when it's my turn to speak. What you don't want to do is to waste that 1 minute. That a lot of people would say, oh, I have to psych myself up. No, you write something on that, essentially your cheat sheet, and that would help you. Because during the conversation or during the time when you're given the chance to speak, you'd have to give examples. You have to expound on what you say. Sometimes it's very hard when you have nothing to look at. But if you've got something of a flow chart there, that would then help you. And most importantly, the other thing is that when you speak with another person, and this is beyond IELTS, it's very hard to connect with a person that is angry, frowning. So always remember, smile. A smile can really take you a long way. So for our last tips, in summary, most important tips I could give you: first, be confident of yourself. Confidence can take you a long way. Second, read the instructions. If the instruction says just use 3 words or less, just use 3 words or less. 4 words is not 3 words or less. If you use 4 words, that invalidates your answer straight away. You can also use a lot of free tutorials that is available online. There's a lot of free tutorials that you can find on YouTube, so make sure you use them. You're not a native English speaker. So if you have the money, why don't you enroll yourself in a reputable review center? This might be a really valid choice, because if you really need help professionally, then that's a good option for you. Most importantly, practice, practice, practice. So always remember, Manong knows.
Manong knows best.